I'll just wait for it to say. Okay, which would be good. I'll bring us live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the show. This is Point to the Spot. As always, a US-based podcast focused on the world of football. And tonight, we will be firmly focused on the US. We are kicking off a brand new segment, as we alluded to last week, looking at the various potential MLS expansion sites in the US and talking with some of the groups and people interested in bringing MLS to their communities. And tonight, we start off with Aaron Marvel, who is joining us from deep in the heart of Texas. And he is working with a group called MLS in San Antonio, grassroots group supporting the formal bid, looking to make soccer in San Antonio as much a part of the city as the Riverwalk, the Alamo, and Blue Bonnets. Aaron, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. Excellent references there. Don't hear too many non-Texans know about Blue Bonnets.
I'm cheating a little bit. My dad went to the University of Texas, San Antonio, so.
Oh, right on. Go Roadrunners.
Always. Birds up.
Birds up.
So I guess starting off, Aaron, can you kind of just like sell us on MLS in San Antonio? Why do you think the league should be coming to your city?
Oh, man. Well, there's a lot of good reasons why MLS should come to San Antonio. I guess, I shouldn't even say this in like a joking way, but it might come off that way. We've got a stadium. There's, so many markets out there that have such a problem with getting their stadium situation together, and ours is halfway built. So it's not going to take a lot to expand it to get into MLS. But I think the biggest reason, certainly in the last couple years, is the emergence of Spurs Sports and Entertainment as the new ownership group of the soccer team in town. I don't know how familiar you guys are with the soccer history in San Antonio, but in recent history, we had a different team, the Scorpions, and they were owned by this gentleman named Gordon Hartman, who's a great philanthropist in town. The stadium, Toyota Field, that I'm talking about is actually right next to Morgan's Wonderland, which is deeply tied to Gordon Hartman. It's basically a theme park for challenged children. And so the Scorpions were owned by him for 4 years. And, the pressure, or maybe not, I don't know if pressure is the right word, but it was clearly becoming obvious that San Antonio was, going to be a market that really was going to challenge to take that next step to go to MLS, hopefully. And I think it was clear that for all his good intentions, because the Scorpions were essentially a non-profit. All the profits from the team were going to this park. So, it was a very noble, great, different cause. It's not something you see in sports very often. But it just kind of became clear that he wasn't, especially under that model, going to be able to take the next step for San Antonio. And so long story short, the Spurs, who have long wanted to be in the soccer game, they actually had rights to a USL team for a number of years and just never had the opportunity to cash in on it. They kind of stepped in, and the baton was, that's the short and easy way to say it.
Well, and we were talking about this actually before you came on, that's kind of very unique. Oh.
You guys saw it?
I think we lost Andrew.
Oh, okay. No worries.
Oh, man.
The swampus internet connection. We'll be okay.
It'll be fine. He'll come back along.
Yeah, of course.
But wow, me and Jack were talking about before it came on. Like, this website is absolutely gorgeous. Wow, I can't give you enough plaudits.
Yeah, I'm glad you guys have seen the website. So for anybody out there who doesn't know what you're talking about, it's MLSinsa.com, and Yeah, I mean, we're really, really proud of it. I'll just tell you that, MLS and SA, there's several of us that are part of the team, and we all kind of do different things within the group. And so one of the guys in the group, Michael Macias, he was really the brains and the wherewithal behind the website. And we would all kind of give him our ideas and our input, but he was the one who really put it together and made it happen. And yeah, I mean, it is a slick, awesome website that we're really, really proud of. And I'll just say, it looks great on mobile, but if you have the chance to view it on your desktop, that's really where you can get the full experience of the website. And I mean, we're just trying to make this thing as professional as we can. I mean, we're serious about drawing attention to San Antonio. I mean, we're one of those weird markets where we feel like we're not talked about a lot, and so it's kind of up to us to be our own best promoters per se. And that was a large reason why we started MLS and SA to begin with. We kind of felt like there wasn't a voice for San Antonio, and if our own citizens weren't going to do it, then who was? So
Yeah, we can't give him enough plaudits. That was like professional was definitely the first word that came to mind. To the point that we thought we were going to be talking to someone from like the Spurs hierarchy, because this is without a doubt a professional website. So that guy needs a lot of credit.
yeah, I mean, it really does look awesome. We would love it if your listeners went and checked it out. I should point out we're not affiliated with SS&E. We're just a grassroots group of guys just trying to get the name out there. But I will say, we do have relationships with people within the organization. And, we were already in existence when the Spurs came aboard. And, maybe they were even a little surprised at what we had built up to that point. And, they've really embraced us, and I have a feeling when things really start to ramp up, you might see, even more of a collaboration that we've seen so far. But yeah, I mean, we do have relationships there, but I guess it's important to say we're not affiliated with the organization.
And I mean, going forward, I know that we've seen this. We not too long ago spoke with somebody from the Minnesota Dark Clouds, who is the big supporter section for Minnesota United, who of course just joined MLS, and they're actually having a big role in the planning of the soccer-specific stadium that they're going to be building up in Minneapolis. So that's something that you guys as a group are hoping to have some say in, with some aspects of the development of the club. Is that something that you said it yourselves, the SS&E were a little bit surprised, and I mean rightfully so. They are in a lot of sports already that don't really get as much of like a family feel to them as soccer clubs do. Is that something that you would be interested in, like that you as a group are expecting or interested in, with like having say in how things happen and how the clubs develop, stuff like that?
I think we have a say to a certain point. I mean, we've definitely kind of relayed things either in face-to-face conversations or through the internet. Like, just one example, when Orlando rolled out their beautiful SSS, they have that standing area, the safe standing for the supporters, and I think it's called the Wall down there. And, as soon as everybody saw that, there was a lot of, oh man, that's something I really hope that they're putting into the designs, for the upgrades towards Toyota Field. But, I should say, the Spurs, they're definitely their own entity. You know what I mean? They will take input, but at the end of the day, they're running the show. They're definitely trying to involve the fans as much as they can, and they've really been tremendous in that regard. I mean, they're quite an open book with the fans from my experience and from what I see around the city. But when it comes to like the intricate things like planning the stadium, I mean, a lot of that stuff is really being done behind the scenes, and quite frankly, we haven't seen what the renderings are going to look like. Now, we have previous Toyota Field renderings from the Scorpions days that were made public. So we have a vague idea of what an expanded Toyota Field could look like. But every indication that I have is the Spurs are working with a brand new architectural group. I say brand new, different than what the Scorpions were working with, and one that is known to have some ties with MLS. And essentially, we're getting all these indications that the build out is going to be completely different. Like, it's going to be unrecognizable from what we've seen before. So we're actually anxious to see what those plans are. We know they're working on them. Clearly, it was part of the bid that was put in back at the end of January. But to this point, they haven't been made public here in San Antonio.
So one thing I was kind of curious to hear about, and my Wi-Fi is terrible, so I apologize for briefly dropping out. Kind of the rebranding of SAFC from the Scorpions and also the transition to USL, has that been a success? Is the club kind of breaking through in the sports scene in San Antonio, do you see? Because they're very used to having, winning basketball team, and there's a lot of not just sports, but other entertainment options. Do you see that the club has kind of made its mark on the city in some ways?
Oh, definitely. So I think they did two really, really smart things when they rebranded the team. First of all, let me just say, I can't overstate this enough for your people that aren't listening from San Antonio. The Spurs and the relationship that the city has with the Spurs is second to none. I mean, they're our only major professional sports team in town, with all due respect to the Stars from the WNBA. So, they're it when it comes to sports. Now, we have other teams in town, a couple that the Spurs own themselves, the Rampage, which is an AHL hockey team, and then the aforementioned Stars. We also have a AA baseball team in town. So we have a lot of these lower level kind of sports. But when it comes to major sports, it's the Spurs. And so this city is just absolutely nuts about the Spurs. And, the fact that they've done so much winning in the last 2 decades only takes it that much further. And, we're a huge city. I mean, we're the 7th biggest city in the country, which I think surprises some people. They don't realize what a big place San Antonio is. And I think part of it is because our sports footprint is just so small that, we get associated with being a really small market. And of course, we're a smaller media market. So, that plays into that as well. But anyway, to get to the rebrand, so they did 2 really smart things, in my opinion. The first was they tied it directly to the brand. And there's even, a little part of the spur in the crest. And then the other thing they did, which if you know anything about San Antonio, we're a huge military town. And the 5 stripes that you see on the crest are representative of the 5 branches of the military. And so, just a direct tie to something that's so big and so important here in San Antonio. So, those 2 things combined, I know they got a lot of flack for, the giving it the generic FC name. I actually think that's kind of cool because I think it, over time will lend itself to the fans coming up with a nickname for the team, very organically, I think. We're not there yet. This thing's still in baby stages, but yeah, I mean, and as far as the impact around town, I mean, you have unbelievable cross promotional opportunities that the Scorpions never have. I mean, you go to Spurs games and sometimes you'll actually see the team being introduced like in between quarters at the games. You constantly see advertising at the Spurs games. You see SAFC commercials during Spurs games and other big soccer games in town. And, just everything. Billboards. They even did some bus wraps. I mean, they've done a lot promotionally here in town. So, being a non-major entity, it's taking a little bit of time. but you're definitely starting to see that impact.
No, I mean, it's definitely one of the big things that you want to see. Something that, is kind of been promoted, and we see it on the MLS and SA website. Of course, the mayor of San Antonio, Ivy Taylor, she's very on board with this. And that's, it's a big talking point in a situation like this. To my understanding, Toyota Field is publicly owned, and they've signed a lease with SS&E for them to use the stadium and the facilities for the next 20 years or something. I believe that's right.
Yep, that's correct.
What is the rest of? I mean, you said San Antonio is a big place, large city council. What is that like? Are people on city council and the mayor herself? Have they been really backing the project? Are they really campaigning to get another major professional sports franchise within the city?
So this is an interesting time to raise this particular point, because we're actually in the middle of an election right now. The main election was a month ago, but we didn't have some clear-cut winners, and so we actually have a runoff for our mayor election, which will be coming out this next weekend. And there's also a couple city council seats that are undecided as well. So we might have a totally different mayor in a week. But just focusing on what's in front of us at the moment, the mayor is clearly supportive of the MLS project. She's in the promotional videos, which you can watch on the website. That would be the videos that the Spurs themselves have put together. She included a formal letter in the bid that was addressed to Don Garber and MLS executives. So she's definitely behind it, and her opponent, Ron Nierenberg, he is coming from the city council, and to this point, he's been supportive on the city council. So from a mayor standpoint, no matter who wins, I feel like we're still going to have somebody who is very much in favor of getting MLS here in San Antonio. And the city council has been supportive as well. So we don't really have, political roadblocks here. And like you said, the stadium's publicly owned with a long lease, and it really just comes down to the council, because it sounds like there's probably going to be some public funding for this stadium. So it really just comes down to the council putting this thing on the ballot and then the voters approving it.
Yeah, and that's definitely a reasonable thing. Obviously, public funding is a big deal, and it's very important in a stadium bid. We saw that kind of in Tampa Bay with their overwhelming approval of the referendum. I mean, almost 90% of voters were on board for the Rowdies referendum. I'll toss it back to Andrew. I know he has some other things that he wants to touch on.
Yeah, well, just one thing that kind of has come up lately is that looking at Dallas being the best team in the league, Houston having a fairly almost brand new stadium, have both still kind of struggled to get people in the seats. And people have talked about, is this like something that is a problem with Texas? Is it just those markets? Is it their marketing? Is it the fact that the Dallas stadium is actually impossible to get to in Frisco? Do you think that San Antonio would kind of be able to succeed where those franchises have met some struggles in breaking through in their markets?
Man, that is a super interesting question, you guys, because we've actually been talking about that quite a bit very, very recently. And I can tell you, at the last San Antonio FC match, I ran into the managing director, Tim Holt, who he's also the former president of USL. If you're not familiar with Tim, and he came to us from Orlando City SC. He helped get them off the ground, and he's just a tremendous personality and such a great leader for the cause here in San Antonio. And I asked him that direct question, if he thought it was going to be an issue, and he is not really worried about it. And he didn't really back it up with a bunch of reasons, but I'll give you some that I think kind of makes sense. You kind of alluded to the Dallas thing for one. That stadium is way, way out there. And, there is some chatter about Toyota Field, not being downtown, but, I don't really think that's a hindrance for us, because San Antonio is kind of a unique place. We're not really a residential downtown. Most of the people in San Antonio live in the burbs. So the stadium is out in the burbs, and it's not way out like it is in Frisco. I mean, it's within the city limits. I think it's 12 miles from downtown. So, I mean, it's not like drastically in the middle of nowhere or anything like that. But, my biggest argument with that has always been, the fans are coming now. I mean, we were fourth in the USL in attendance last year. We're fourth in USL in attendance this year. So, why would people who are already coming to the stadium not come if it was MLS? Like, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But, I think there's some more obvious things too. I mean, Houston and Dallas, there's so much else going on there sports wise. Dallas has everything. Houston has everything except for hockey. And I do think that's a factor. And, I look at all these other successful MLS markets, your Portland's, your Real Salt Lakes. I mean, I think we fit right into that. Orlando as well. A lot of these places that have only had one team and then they come in with MLS. And I mean, I really feel like we're set up to be a similarly effective market. And I'll say this for the location of Toyota Field as well. There's always been a lot of chatter about, Austin being, the sexy soccer town as well. And, but they can't get anything off the ground. I mean, they can't even get their USL team together. They were even up for the Manchester Derby, that they were going to play it at UT's football stadium, and it fell apart. So, there's a lot of politics in Austin. But where the stadium is, it's right on I-35, and I-35 connects San Antonio and Austin, and it's on the north side of San Antonio. So, I mean, if you're talking about trying to get some people from Austin to come be a part of this thing as well and adopt this team as their own as well, which I think they would, it couldn't be in a better place for them as far as ease of getting to the stadium.
And speaking about kind of being farther out, is it something that's easily accessible by public transit for, fans to get out to the field?
No, that is a big problem. That's just a problem in San Antonio in general, though. I mean, public transportation here in San Antonio is not great. We basically have a bus system that's called Via, and that's pretty much it, aside from like ride sharing. So that is definitely something that I think they could probably address in some way, shape, or form. I know there's been a lot of chatter recently, too, about light rail being worked. I don't know if that's going to be a possibility with where Toyota Field is located or not. But I don't know that it's a big hindrance as far as getting people to games. San Antonio is just kind of a spread out place. And, there are people that rely on public transportation, but I don't know the numbers, but I don't get the impression that it's like the majority of the city.
There's a very interesting relationship that I've seen with light rail and soccer cities for some reason. That it seems to always come up.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because you talk about the attendance problems in Houston, and I can tell you that they have free rail rides to their games. The Dynamo offer that, and so even with a downtown stadium and free train rides, they're still not getting people in that stadium. But actually going back to that topic really fast, I should mention this too as what I think is something that would be a positive for all three markets is if you bring San Antonio in, you've got yourself a Texas Cup, in the same way that you have Cascadia. I think Houston and Dallas, for as big of a rivalry as that is, I think they're kind of bored with each other. And I think that would, adding San Antonio to that mix, just like we have the NBA rivalries with the Rockets and the Mavs, I don't think there's a better thing you can do to try to pick back up, the interest in the whole state as far as adding another team would be.
Aaron, I can't thank you enough. That's exactly the direction I wanted to take this conversation because there's a lot of talk about a lot of the derbies in MLS being a little bit manufactured, not quite. The only there's a couple old school, like turn of the century old playoff beefs that are still playing out. Like for some reason, Chicago, our closest team, isn't a big fan of New England from some old playoff games, but like I think adding the San Antonio market into that Texas situation could really spurt on a lot of that and drive those, kind of drive the rivalry a little bit more into more of a NYCFC, New York Red Bulls type, where you do kind of feel a little bit of animosity and you see it on the field, which in great, not only for the league, but for the fans.
We think it would be tremendous. And, we should mention this too, because if you're not in Texas, there's a tendency to think that, because these cities are in the same state, that they're close to each other. And they're really not. It would not really behoove anybody in San Antonio to, buy a season ticket for the Dynamo, because it's a 3-hour drive each way. But that is definitely close enough where, 1 or 2 times a year, if you're going there on a road trip, it's very, very doable. And the same for Dallas, which is 4.5 hours away. It's far. Texas is big, but it's definitely something that I think would be great. And, I think everybody would benefit from it. And I would love to see a true Texas Cup. And I think a lot of people would.
It would definitely do. It would definitely do a little bit better than that, Brimstone Cup that is currently up for grabs.
Yeah. Well, I can say this too: the ownership of both of those teams have in the past publicly stated that they are both in favor of San Antonio getting a team for MLS, and I think that matters. I mean, when you talk about ownership groups and who MLS wants at the table, I think people in Houston and Dallas have a pretty good idea of what they're going to get with Spurs Sports and Entertainment coming to the table, which they have, such a tremendous reputation, not just in the United States, but globally.
Reed, do you have anything else, or Jack?
No, I think we've definitely gotten what we need. If you don't have anything, Andrew.
I guess kind of just like one last question, thinking about Austin. Is there a scenario, do you think, where like the Aztecs kind of get back up and running and you have some competition between the cities where, Austin is like, well, maybe we want MLS, or do you think that there would really be cooperation between the two cities? It doesn't sound like, to the best of my knowledge, the Aztecs are anywhere near where they need to be. I mean, they were playing in like a high school football stadium. That's not great. And then they went under.
I don't know what's going on with soccer in Austin. I'm not as plugged in, but what I can tell you is if they do get a team to come back into USL or any other soccer league, it's probably not going to be the Aztecs. I have a feeling that brand is pretty much over. There's definitely people in Austin who have their own, wants and desires for their own MLS team, but to the best of my knowledge, there's no existing group or any existing plan, anything that would indicate they're anywhere close to being for MLS. So, maybe that's a better question if we get to the end of these 4 teams and, these 4 expansion teams that are coming, and San Antonio is not one of them. Maybe it's a better question at that time. Does Austin get themselves in the mix at that time? But I don't think we're going to get there. I think San Antonio is going to get one of these 4 spots. I mean, we're not talked about a lot, but there's a very quiet confidence here among the SS&E clan. And the ownership group is strong. Their reputation is strong. Their desire is there. The fans are there. The stadium is half built. And, we talked about all these other X factors, and I'll give you one more. And that is, we're one of the biggest Hispanic audiences in the country. And that is definitely a demographic that MLS covets. And I actually think that's one of our biggest ace in the holes.
I think that's a perfect way. Oh, Reed, do you have something?
Yeah, just real quick. I know there's a ton of hype surrounding Diplo and Drogba's Phoenix Rising in Phoenix, Arizona, and that's also one of their major selling points is that the very large underserved Hispanic communities. In Austin being the second largest city in Texas, it's definitely I think there's a lot of credence to that point, and I think it'll definitely fill a lot of seats.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned that because Phoenix Rising was just here a couple weeks ago, and we had some indications that Drogba might take the field in the match, and then he ended up not coming, so that was kind of a bummer. But yeah, Phoenix I think is a real threat to San Antonio's bid. I mean, they're a big market, but they kind of remind me of a Houston or a Dallas in terms of, I mean, they've got everything under the sun out there from a sports competitive perspective. And, yeah, they have a lot of hype with a lot of celebrities in their ownership group, and they're making a lot of noise publicly. And that's kind of what I mean about a quiet confidence. I mean, San Antonio is not being mentioned. A lot of people have written us off because we're not in the press. We're not being mentioned. And we're never going to be the sexy place, I guess. But I don't know. I feel strongly in this ownership group. I think ownership group is going to be a real big part of who gets these teams, and I think stadium's going to be a big part of it. And like I said, ours is already in the ground, so that's a huge advantage. And then I think there's going to be some X factors, and for us, I really think it's going to be that Hispanic pull, but. To be fair, I mean, I do think Phoenix is a strong challenger, especially because clearly we're going to be a West team, and clearly they're in the West as well. So it's a factor too, location.
Well, Aaron, we want to thank you for coming on the air. Where can they find you, and can they find our listeners? Where can they find your group on social media and online?
Yeah, so I would encourage anyone who's interested in following what's going on in San Antonio to follow us we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook. It's MLS in SA for all of that. And like we talked about earlier, definitely go check out the website we've built, mlsinsa.com.
A beautiful website it is. Well, we'd like to thank Aaron again for coming on the air. If you want to check out Point to the Spot on the social, you can do so at Point to the Spot with the numeral 2. And please do follow us on iTunes, SoundCloud, everywhere you can find podcasts and audio things. We will be back in the midweek talking about something we don't know yet, but we hope you enjoyed your first round of MLS expansion talk, and we hope you have a great week.